They follow through with an Elise of their own. Of course, no surprises that Elise gets taken off the board. It's pretty much been a constant here. The European LCS is continuing on patch 7.12, and now Blitzcrank. So two supports banned away, really targeting out Shay.
Yeah, getting a lot of that focus down towards a playmaker, but with Tahm Kench still available, that has been one of the picks that Shay has used very effectively. And we're probably going to see NIP put emphasis towards the Thresh as the first pick. It is still the most pick and ban champion here in Europe. Tahm Kench is a great option. Yeah.
Lest we forget, though, that Thresh was pretty much one of the first big things we saw out of Chase starting off the split. And even though everyone else had picked it up, he was landing the God hooks left and right. So if I'm HJK right now, I want to start thinking about banning that champion out yourself. Let's see what they end up doing to follow up the Galio.
It's possible they'll ban it out. When you look at jungle presence as well, Lee Sin now up in priority with the Kha'Zix, with that Zac taken off the field. Didn't see much Zac priority in the last game we saw out of Fnatic and Mysterious Monkey. So interesting on this one, we're seeing Zac once again rise back to the top.
Yeah, it goes right back to it. So with the Thresh locked in now for Spraddle, we'll see what H2K are going to answer with. As you said, the Tahm Kench seems a very likely choice lest it go through into the second ban phase. And for Jankos, he's going to have no trouble picking himself up a Kha'Zix.
Yeah, you get the Kha'Zix now. NIP can either go the Xayah, the Kalista. Depends on how they want to go, although Hiku's most played is Varus historically. Over the spring split and the summer split, it's been one of his more successful champions. Unfortunately, not when it comes to wins and losses, with NIP still not having a win to their name.
Yeah, you got to find as much success as you can, but I want to see them branch out, do something different. And here's a start to it at the least. The Caitlyn is a very powerful choice. It can give you some lane dominance. Combined with the Thresh, you got pick potential. So we'll see what the Ninjas are able to do in that bottom lane. And what will their last pick be? It ends up being the Rumble for Prophet, so he gets a comfortable pick.
Yeah, we've seen Prophet on the Rumble a few times. With Hiku playing this Caitlyn, it's a little bit more about lane dominance. We saw one game out of Hiku on Caitlyn before. H2K likely will look for their AD carry here. Ashe is an option if they want to run the engage potential. You've got Xayah as well for the lane. But there are a lot of AD carries still around that H2K could choose from.
Yeah, and there's the Ashe. So we were tempted for just a moment. There were a few fun picks that H2K were toying with their hearts for, and unfortunately just ends up being the Ashe. So.
But we know that Prolly isn't one to really mess around in a draft. We've even had games that technically didn't mean anything for the standings, but H2K say, hey, look, there's so much limited scrim time you can actually get and limited competitive play that why not play a full competitive game? And they're not taking NIP lightly. They need a win in this series for H2K as well to kind of kickstart their standings in Group B once again.
Absolutely.
They're starting to slip.
Yeah, just a little bit. And as the Fnatic members were pretty outspoken, not just on the desk, but even in the post-game interview about H2K not really providing that much of a challenge, playing very slowly, and that's got to change. Maybe not against the Ninjas, but it's got to start somewhere.
With Rek'Sai gone in Phase 2, Lee Sin, you have to imagine it's Shook. You got to always think about Lee Sin for Shook. If it doesn't get banned away, likely Nip will pick it up. But when we look at it, I wonder whether H2K will be granted a Fiora option. Should they want it?
Odoamne is a beast on that champion.
Not the necessarily best lane matchup into Rumble at all, but we've, as you said, Odoamne on Fiora. If it feels right, he ends up getting like 8 kills in a game, going huge and controlling that side lane.
Yes, indeed. All right, Ninjas, what do you got? Last ban ticking, 5 seconds to do it, and it's going to be the Kled.
Same kind of style. Same kind of style that gets taken away here. And H2K may opt for that, then save mid lane. Or we saw them hover Taliyah earlier. Febiven has been one of the standout mid laners this split so far. So wouldn't be surprised to see them blind pick a Syndra, something like that, into that middle lane coming through. Especially with Cassiopeia banned out.
Yeah, and it would be a takeaway from Nagne too. But they end up locking in the Gragas, so that should be what Odoamne takes up to the top with the Kha'Zix already being revealed.
And that is a fine matchup up against the Rumble. You weather the early damage out of the Rumble and you have teamfight impact. It is, of course, locked into the top lane as we have 2 picks from Ninjas in Pajamas. The Olaf in order to trade somewhat in the early game against this Kha'Zix. Then that Corki, the safe mid laner, roaming presence. Where will we see H2K go against this with the last pick for mid lane?
Talking about roaming, playing with the idea of the Cassin, but Febiven might want to play it safe himself. We see 280 carries in the mid lane. As the seconds tick down, no is the answer, and it ends up being the Orianna. So they have pretty beefy team fight when you think about it on the H2K side.
Yeah, H2K with a solid team fight. It's not necessarily all focused on the early game, but what it is focused on is the set plays across the map. You fire off the Ash Arrow, bring Tahm Kench in, maybe with a Gragas, and you get right behind the enemy, set up fights for yourself. And then Nip, on the other hand, a little bit more focused on that pushing, sieging. Corki, Caitlyn, good at pushing towards towers. You've got Rumble, the equalizer there as well. So Nip looking along the building game rather than the team fight game so much. They still have team fight presence. Let's not overlook that.
I wonder if NIP are thinking they can play this one out nice and slow. And looking at the Fnatic game, you have to think things are going to change for H2K, but looking at the Fnatic game, it was a little slower. We know H2K kind of likes to take things in cruise control sometimes. If NIP don't fall behind too far early, this could be an open window for them.
It could be. Corki scales very well. Caitlyn scales very well through the game. So it's kind of on Prophet and Shook to get Nagne and Hikyu a little bit earlier through the game. But it's not like Nagne's going to struggle on the Corki.
Nah.
It's a fine matchup at almost all points of the game.
And we've seen it go completely explosive in this week now that it's come back into the LCS with patch 7.12. Will it be enough for Nagne and the Ninjas in Pajamas to take the lead in this series? But H2K, hurting unit all around. Will they be coming back? Guns a-blazing. We're about to find out. We will load up onto Summoner's Rift. The crowd is ready. And after that last series, I certainly hope this one is just as explosive. Let's find out as we get loaded into game one.
Not quite the Katarina Blitzcrank.
No, it's not like that. But you know what? It's going to be going all the same. Here we go.
Yeah. Oh, gameception going on there. I guess crowdception.
Well, it's the night sky over on Summoner's Rift right now as NIP and H2K get ready to face off.
Yeah, as we head to head in this middle lane, at least from Nagne, Febiven, it's going to be a scaling game. A lot more about that early harass. You can get a little bit of back and forth there. But Febiven has looked arguably like the best or maybe second best mid laner. He had a bit of a weaker performance over the last series or so where Caps looked to get the better of him, but honestly Febiven's going from strength to strength right now. It was really proved me wrong when I've said that I thought he had tumbled down a little bit of the rankings in spring.
Well, that's the thing about Febiven. He's a bit boomer bust for a while. Everyone always makes that joke about, oh, do we get 2015 Febiven or 2016 Febiven? Well, 2017 is a new year. Get with it, people.
Yeah, it is. And probably earlier was talking about how this is a split. They go to Worlds. It's not about being second.
Not even second at Worlds. He was talking about finals. just go to finals.
See how often we can miss.
I mean, they made semis. They gotta keep moving up the ladder, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to forget that this is a team that was top 4 in the world.
Yeah, a lot of discussion on their path to the finals, but you can't really take away the fact that that is their achievement. No, or at least the semifinals, if you'll excuse me.
How you thinking about this year?
Yeah, I'm thinking about this year. They're going to meet Albus Nox Luna in the semifinals, which unfortunately doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, I was going to say, that'd be a hell of an achievement to do again. But they got to go all the way through.
And looking at one thing they can utilize to get the the goal of Worlds maybe in their favor. Che, this Tahm Kench, especially in this game, I think is going to be a very entertaining pick to watch. It has, whenever he's played it, been a pick that H2K have looked a lot more active on the map with. Very quick to make plays, very quick to punish their opponents. And I think that's a standout player to watch in this game.
Yeah, giving themselves the tempo and something that Che has been able to do very well when he's on champions that he feels very comfortable with. And honestly, Nuclear's not been looking too shabby either to start things off. Also on this long-range carry that can set up engagements. A little bit of a smoother curve than the Caitlyn's going to have as well. So we'll have to definitely keep an eye on the bottom lane. But you got to always keep one eye peeled in the mid because you never know when Febiven's going to go all in.
Yeah, the problem is for Nagne right now is he has lost a lot of health early on. Obviously, Corrupting Potion will be able to fill that one back up when he ends up recalling. And there's always that option of Sprattle heading to the mid lane, but it's too early for a mid lane roam right now. This is Sprattle just trying to find out where Jankos is. Well, surprise, surprise, they're heading for one of the only players that in the early game we said had to get through. Prophet, he's in trouble.
There we go, Odoamne hopping for him, but Jankos follows through with a flash, and they just keep throwing the autos. Shook is going to tag his way in. There's the axe, and all of a sudden the Flame Spitter's on. It was all a bait, it's first blood. Step 1, pretend to get killed. Step 2, bring a jungler. And step 3 is Prophet.
Jankos flashed early, and it really is cashing in there for Prophet in the top lane. That is exactly what they needed. Puglands in the bottom lane shouldn't result in a kill here for Che. We'll hang on to both of his summoners as well, but That's exactly what H2K didn't want happening. Giving kills over to Prophet has been one of the only ways that NIP have looked to successfully stabilize throughout some of their games, and I think being on a Rumble is a good position for that for him as well.
Yeah. odoamne already down, or excuse me, Jankos already down 1 kill on the board, and Odo's going to have to watch his back. You can already see that Prophet is building up that CS advantage over him on top of the kill. You have to be feeling pretty good if you're NIP at the moment. We'll see how it all continues if the focus stays topside for the time being.
And now it becomes quite difficult for odoamne. Although he does have his flash and Prophet doesn't, that is one area that could be exploited by H2K. But odoamne now basically in a matchup that he will get pushed in, he will lose a lot of the trades, and he's down in CS now as well. So I wouldn't be surprised to see H2K, as soon as Che hits level 6, pull odoamne back under the tower, bring Tahm Kench up to the top side with the Ash Arrow as well, and actually just put a lane swap into NIP's face and say, okay, deal with this, because this is how we'll strategically get back into this game.
Gonna have to try. Now, meanwhile, we'll check back in with the mid lane because Nagne not really fearing Febiven as much as he maybe should. He's talked about it being a very safe early game pickup on the Corki, but still, Febiven can play it out aggressively as we keep tabs on both of our junglers here. Shook going to be finding out the hard way that Jankos is looking to take away a few of his camps. Might start getting to push him back, and it's always a tall task facing off against a jungler like Jankos. Shook has the experience to match.
So here's one thing about the Doran's Ring change that we may actually see in effect. Gragas goes back, buys the Dark Seal, of course, not exactly out of the ordinary. You see that in enhanced potions and the like, but I wonder whether the next item odoamne buys is going to be a Null Magic Mantle into more magic resist to start this off, because he will require a little oomph in his build. Without the mana regen coming from the Doran's Blade, he's one of the champions, Doran's Ring, he's one of the champions that suffers the worst from it, so unless you can compensate for that with a few extra combat stats in a more efficient build path, I wonder where odoamne is going to look on that top side, because he's losing heavily in CS already.
Yeah, he's going to be in some trouble. Might need to be calling for help in just a little bit, but pings are flying all across the board. And it does seem like Shook is in the better position to really make an impact on the map. Jankos is not going to be able to find too much in terms of camps. And in all honesty, Jankos, his early game performance, it just hasn't quite been as good as we normally expect from him. And Shook has been the one who's been doing not too bad. Yeah,
when it comes to First Blood participation, you can see Shook has been in the most First Bloods for his team. And once again, Shook came topside in this game.
Okay, we'll talk about that in a little bit because it's the mid side we want to worry about. Febiven was forced to burn both of his summoners as Prophet came all the way down to help out with Nagne. But yeah, I was going to say, honestly, the First Blood King seems to have lost his crown, or at least a few jewels out of it.
We're going to have to see if you can find it again. Hopefully no one melted it down and sold it for scrap, because probably going to want that back if they want to make it to Worlds.
Yeah, you need as much as you can get. Shook is about to hit that level 6 mark as he moves further down into the jungle to be joined out by Spraddle. But it does seem like NIP are perfectly content to just keep the lead they have, as slight as it is.
And it's a bit of a rough spot for H2K. Still no flash on Jankos, no flash now on Febiven, as they start to hit the level 6 mark on a couple of champions. NIP now going aggressively into the enemy jungle, taking away as much as they can from H2K. And this is one of the risks that H2K actually bought for themselves, is with a losing top lane, at least for the laning phase, a scaling mid laner, and a defensive bottom lane pre-6, NIP have a lot of room to play with on the map, and that's exactly what they're doing. And this is actually a good start out of NIP. Look, Prophet is nearly double the CS of odoamne.
Yeah, and the 2 Dark Seals, so Odo's traded in 1 ring for a couple more, and it's a little unfortunate when you have to do something like that as the changes have come through. They obviously opted into this matchup, but NIP have effectively been able to punish it, and this is what we talked about in the beginning. When Prophet gets ahead in the early game, that is one of the big ways that NIP have found some success, despite not having any game victories. It's a start of something. I mean, you're talking a 1,300 gold advantage and map control on this bottom side as well.
I must admit, I wasn't anticipating the second Dark Seal coming from odoamne. It's for the combat stats plus the enhanced potions. Remember we used to see Singed
all the time. I still do that, by the way.
That was silly. That was...
It's still not unique.
Yeah, I'm glad it's not quite as effective as it used to be on Singed, because that was a bit silly when we used to see him a couple of games. But there was the Null Magic Mantle that we were kind of expecting out of odoamne.
But Prophet goes for fairly defensive rush here because his Merc Treads were the first item that he actually picked up, right? Like, so he's still going to get a lot of power. He's still going to get a lot of damage, but it's going to be a while, and maybe not too long for Nagne as he gets pulled in by the Shockwave, but Febiven doesn't have enough follow-up to kill him.
Greedy by Nagne being that far pushed up without Flash, especially up against a jungle like a Kha'Zix. But here is the H2K play we were talking about.
Shay is coming in, but he doesn't bring anyone else to the party. Jankos on top of Nagne inside the pit. The barrel will knock him into the corner, and Odoamne gets the belly bop off. But meanwhile, it looked like Febiven was going to be in some trouble. Shook was on top of him, but gets split out, and here comes the Ash Arrow out of Nuclear. Down it goes! Right into Hikyu's face, but there's nowhere to follow up.
No kill, but it hits. That's all you're looking for on that one.
He's 1 for 1.
Yeah, 1 for 1 on the arrow.
We're counting on Nuclear.
How telegraphed, Pyra, was that Tahm Kench roam? If I told you 4 minutes ago that H2K would bring their Tahm Kench to the top side into a losing matchup...
Pretty sure you did.
Why aren't NIP reading that this is the time for that play? Nagne pushes up in the mid lane, already exposes himself to this type of play. Look, they're running over vision. NIP can see this coming, but they have no way of bailing out of the situation. Shook is too deep in the enemy jungle. By the time the Tahm Kench arrives, Prophet has closed the gap, thinking they can get a kill, but it all goes H2K's way. And that's the type of thing that NIP have to respect. This is what H2K will do and punish you with.
Yeah, and even though it looked like Shook might have been able to get on top of Febiven, surprised, there's a Tahm Kench right there. And yeah, then Hikyu just doesn't really do anything.
And this is one of the reasons why H2K plus Tahm Kench equals successful. And realistically, NIP, they had a great opportunity. They still have the lead right now. But H2K, that's enough to start stabilizing at least everything apart from top lane.
Yeah, pick up the kill on Nagne. I mean, Odoamne did get that kill, so it's a merciful gold influx for him. So he'll be happy with it, despite the fact that he's still going to be in a pretty hefty deficit up against Prophet, who, by the way, is going to roaming right now. So he's trying to be the difference maker as this early game drags on.
Odoamne is currently down 800 gold. And this is the largest CS lead at 10 minutes for Prophet this split. And conversely, the largest deficit for Odoamne at 10 this split.
Oh, funny how that works out.
Yeah, well, certainly everything is going in Prophet's favor in the top side. The same can't be said for the rest of the map. You can see Nuclear has held on in the bottom lane. Febiven has the advantage in middle lane, and Nagne is kind of behind on farm, despite the fact that he had pressured Febiven back.
Yeah, it does seem like NIP kind of left that window open a little bit, and HK were able to leap through it. Still, the gold deficit and the Infernal Dragon that nobody has really looked at too closely, but there's a lot of vision here now. Jankos, you could be in trouble. There's the TP, they turn it right back around as Shook has to Ragnarok out of there, but not fast enough, as Febiven will get the finishing blow. Now Spraddle and Hikyu looking to try and contest out with this duo lane, but it's just a vision war.
NIP are not respecting H2K's ability to group early game. They're expecting to wait for this Orianna to power up, to wait for the Ashe. But H2K know they cannot sit around. Playing from behind is not necessarily going to be that easy with this type of composition, and it doesn't matter that Prophet is so astronomically ahead in the top lane if H2K are winning every single other area.
Absolutely. Really doesn't matter. Prophet going to try to still make plays around the map, but despite the fact that he owns that top side, we'll see what he's able to do on the bottom as he TPs in right in front of the face of Tahm Kench. Can Prophet get the kill up? Well, it looks like they might have found Nuclear without his help, but he heal baits on. Can he take out Hikyu? No, he cannot. That's a 1 kill for the AD carry of NIP, and Shay's going to have to flash out. Misfire for H2K.
Yeah, that was a little greedy out of Nuclear. The same mistake. We just saw NIP make that mistake. H2K do exactly the same thing, and now it transitions into an Infernal Drake, so perhaps even more damning for H2K, not respecting the ability for Prophet to get to the bottom lane. Back and forth go the advantages. It's been quite a messy game. See if Jankos can get the steal.
Can he get the smite steal off? No, he cannot, but he might be able to get the consolation prize of the kill. Actually, he has to flash outside, and he's on the wrong side of that pit right now. Let's see if he can sneak his way out, or he's going to get splatted by Nagne.
This has been quite a messy game from both teams.
Just a
already.
little bit.
Normally the strength of H2K in the top lane. Nagne is going to check it. He's going to just check it.
Oh! I don't think you need a rocket to splat a bug, but okay.
Well,
all right, Nagne.
Checking the bush with your ult is not rocket science. Let's put it that way. Jankos should have just tried to recall out. Didn't obviously have a whole lot of time, was trying to be tricky and get away. Again, this game is so open and so back and forth and messy that H2K now are able to capitalize on Nagne being out of lane for so long by Febiven taking a 20 CS lead for himself and then taking the tower that they'd weakened early. This is by no means the cleanest macro you're ever going to see in League of Legends.
No, but in a scaling game, every single kill counts, right? And so does that Infernal Drake. I mean, there's another one that's going to be on the map when it next spawns up. And let's take a look at how this engage started down bottom. Nuclear was 1v2, and he was way far forward.
Yeah, he thought he was okay because of the way that he'd pushed so far up, but that also is the detriment to him because Prophet is able to cut Che off. Che wasn't going to ult down to the bottom lane because it would have been interrupted by Prophet because he basically TP'd into his face. Jankos could try and steal again.
Good. Not going to go there in time. It does get secured, and Odoamne is right inside of the Ninjas team. And it's Hiku that's going to be able to pick up a second kill on the game. NIP extending that gold lead.
Yeah, okay, credit to NIP where it is due. Moving to the Rift Herald, knowing they can utilize this top lane advantage after losing the mid tower. You can pick up the Rift Herald, you'll be able to break the tower underneath that Orianna should you choose to. And then look for the top tower before it. So, I mean, NIP are playing better than I think a lot of people would have given them credit for at this point.
Yeah, and in all honesty, NIP are this team. We said it earlier. They do have a early game that tends to stay fairly even. We don't always see a lead. It bounces up and down sometimes. But in all honesty, they're not terrible in the first 15 minutes of play.
And they're pretty good at the objective game when you look at first blood participation, or at least percentage, and they're scoring the first tower of the game as well. They didn't get it in this game, unfortunately, but then when we look at how they perform later on in the game, you can see that NIP basically fall off a cliff post 20 minutes.
Yeah, you don't want to invest in that stock.
Yeah. But the fact that they can hold most of the teams so close, this is their average of weeks 1 to 3. Doesn't include this game, obviously. But well,
this one's still going.
On average, done well early game.
Yeah, no, and they're able to trade towers. They're able to make objective plays. And if they can keep this going, this is where we could start to see the growth out of a team like NIP. And in all honesty, even some of the better teams they played off against, they have been able to take them in longer games. They just haven't been able to finish anything up yet. And this is sometimes what happens when you have a team that isn't used to playing with all of its own members at the moment, as Che is going to sidestep the Caitlyn trap. Walk away from it with the gray health. H2K still making their escape.
Nagne had roamed down ahead of Febiven there as well. Didn't have the package, but still beat out of lane. So NIP had the numbers advantage. And from what has been maybe heavy criticism on NIP to start this game, they certainly are turning it around.
Yeah.
Both teams are trading a lot closer than I had expected.
I mean, you have to start out by criticizing NIP. Anybody that's gotten to this point in the split and you still haven't managed to pick up a win, obviously that's bad news bears, right? But the fact that they have been able to keep it close against a variety of teams is impressive. And if anything, you got to fault H2K here. We talked about them being all fired up, Jankos bouncing in his chair, everybody ready to kind of avenge their Fnatic loss, but this is still a lot of mistakes out of this team.
Well, whether Odoamne selected the matchup for himself or whether he was given it by the team, this Gragas into Rumble just hasn't been successful for them. It is tough in the early game to get through, especially with the Doran's Ring changes when it comes to actually being able to push back the Rumble.
Well, he does push back the Corki, at the very least, and Nuclear is able to get some free time on the tower down bot. He's got Che waiting in the wings for him, so this is a much safer extension than it was the last time.
Yeah, that's the key part, is Che just hiding around the corner. But while Che is there, it obviously means that H2K can't make a play utilizing this Tahm Kench elsewhere on the map. And things seem to have slowed to a tower trade at this point. NIP looking to pick up their first tower of the game.
Yeah, well, they nearly got the one on the bottom, but where that fails, they go ahead and decide to finish the one on the top.
They have to use Rift Herald soon. Pretty sure it's due to expire shortly.
They're going to pop that sucker out. Come on.
Problem is, without a wave behind it, it's not going to do a whole lot.
Well, Shook is just kind of happily farming away here.
Don't have the exact time.
He just wants to recall. He's greedy.
That's all he wanted the buff for. Just wanted that empowered.
Oh, there it goes.
Yeah, it must have been close to expiring.
All right, well, that's going to be a long trek to the tower. Good luck.
Rift Herald looks a little bit confused going for the base. It's like, I've never seen here before. You got a nice house.
A whole new world.
I live up in a hole in a river, and you got all these walls, heating.
Gotta let the crab out sometimes. Oof. Sprawl taking a chunk of damage here. Jankos and Che waiting in the wings. Don't want to go in too deep, though. Jankos is going to try his luck to steal away a red
I think
buff.
Nuclear actually is going to kill Red Peril
man.
before it even touches the tower. That's a sad.
They're not even going to
sad
escort it.
Wow.
Talk about abandonment. They just sent him out into the world.
Where's the crowd? There's no
He went
on this one.
No, that's yeah. Can we pan away from that? That's
Yeah,
just sad.
that's sad.
Okay, thank you. I am disappointed in
That
NIP.
actually,
That is terrible parenting.
Maybe you should have just put it top. I like what they were doing in the sense of like try and throw a distraction into the bottom lane, but you were already in position to maybe at least get half the health off the inner tower and top side. At least it would have done something.
All right, well, moving away from that. One thing that is really exciting right now, Stress, is there's another Infernal on the Rift. And this time, H2K are in prime position to take that one out. For some reason, NIP are all stacking up towards top.
Yeah, NIP looking to capitalize on some of the vision control they opened up. With that top tower being down, it gives them the chance to place wards in the enemy topside jungle. But as you said, now it's an Infernal Drake going over to H2K. Lines up some of their scaling a little bit nicer.
Yeah, evens out with what NIP had on the board. Baron due to hit the Rift, so now the objective game starts to get a little hairier than it was before.
Look at the CS gap, though, that Febiven has opened up in that middle lane in response to the way Nagne has been outside of the lane looking for other players on the map. It's basically the same kind of disparity that the Prophet has over Odoamne in the top lane, and that's basically giving away a lot of the gold lead that they would have had.
Yeah, it's like 1,400, pretty big difference. And
yeah, it's actually
when you consider,
larger.
Nagne's just gotten his Trinity Force, right? Because he stopped to pick up a Hex Drinker. He got his Sork Shoes as well. But Febiven, you know, he's on an item and a half looking for 2. And he's not going to have too much trouble as soon as he finishes those channels. I mean, this Orianna is one of those champions that Shockwave, the damage on that gets pretty big the longer you go in this game.
It'll get to a point that it'll basically insta-kill the entire team if it hits.
If they group up like they have been doing.
NIP aren't necessarily running with a tank. Shook isn't gonna, Sprattle isn't necessarily looking for that Locker to the Iron Solari Gargoyle Stoneplate build that we've seen. That might end up being like 5th item for him, which will mean we need a 50-minute game.
Well, I mean, it has slowed down a little bit. I don't know if it's that slow right now, but I mean, we're only 21 minutes in, right? We don't want to get ahead of ourselves because the gold is pretty much dead even at the moment. H2K have that one tower advantage that's kind of making up some of the differential, and EQ is going very aggressive for Nuclear because Prophet was right behind him as he sends a couple Electro Harpoons, and that's an ace in the hole, but Che's able to shrug it off, but Swaddle flashes and plays and fails it, but Nuclear does not with the arrow going straight to the back of his head. However, Nagne is here as well, and looks like Odoamne wants to keep the fight going, gets the barrel in, but it's going to just knock the ninjas away.
Sprattle doing his best Yellow Star impression in the middle lane. Couldn't quite connect.
Spicy. All right, Odoamne wants to keep on going for this one, but H2K, you could see the fast reaction time from this team, but there is no tower to take in the mid. They've already knocked it down. Instead, it's just going to come to nothing for the time being. Prophet's still trying to get involved in whatever he can do, but that lead just hasn't meant as much because Odoamne is going the way of the utility.
With Sprattle's flash down now, though, it means he's kind of a sitting duck if Che can find him with that Abyssal Voyage.
We haven't seen that really since the early game, though. I want to see another one of these big collapse plays from H2K.
I want to see a little more of that. A lot of it is NIP not necessarily giving the opportunity over. It's not the type of thing that you can rely on 100% of the time. Whereas what they could look to do is, if there is vision, go in behind Hikyu in the middle lane. Caitlyn does tend to sit quite far up. Look, there's 2 wards behind Hikyu right now, so you have enough vision to know he's there. Odoamne is roaming up as well. This is the beginning of that play that we're talking about, because look, H2K had dropped back into pocket. Corki is so far back. Here comes the Abyssal Voyage.
There we go. They're right on top of him, and now Hiku's going to have to flash his way away. Teleport, though, coming in for Prophet. He wants to cut them off, but H2K are going to do eyes to this one.
And H2K held everything except the Abyssal Voyage. There was no Grag Assault. There was no Ash Arrow. They get the flash from Hikyu and say, okay, that's all we needed. They got the TP from Prophet as well. So it does go in their favor in the case of Summoners there, even though they don't get that successful engage off.
We see this game is held pretty even for a lot longer than we usually see from the Ninjas in Pajamas, and part of it, I think, does have to do with that team really trying to back off and give H2K this deference, but it's also given the lead, not away, but it's let the gap close quite a bit. And NIP, you know, they have some pretty good late game power, but you look at the side of H2K, and then Orianna just keeps getting scarier and scarier.
If odoamne is able to catch up in CS to Profit, can we say the gap is closing? Is that fair?
Yeah, why not?
Does that one
gap.
count?
That gap. That's a different gap.
Hey, it's a gap between
the
Europe
Odo
and Korea.
Profit. Yeah. It's the Odo Profit gap. Less famous.
Yeah, much less famous.
Oh, Spraddle, hello. Okay. So Febby got his kill.
A polite clap spreads through the audience on that one.
It was a golf clap kind of kill.
Yeah, Spraddle, without that flash, we talked about the impact that is likely to have, and it's Hiku that doesn't have his up next. Che's ultimate is up in about 15 to 20 seconds, so Nip with the numbers disadvantage, now that Spraddle is still not alive, maybe you can look for that play.
Trying to contest on the red buff here, but no smite means that Shook should be able to secure it up. Will reset here, and Che's got to have to swallow Febiven and run away with him. Nico cannot be too happy, but in all honesty, it's been a lot closer than a lot of Ninja's games have been so far.
Yeah, well, now that we've gone past the 20-minute mark, this is where we see whether they live up to holding the game close or whether they're unable to keep up with what H2K are bringing to the table, because we saw that graph earlier. NIP, past this point of the game, generally end up falling behind from an even footing as well. So it's not even like you can say, oh, they were losing, so they lost harder.
But they still make plays. Like, we're seeing a much more defensively minded Ninjas in Pajamas than we are used to seeing. They've kind of historically had this tendency to go in and maybe make some bad trades, maybe just play a little suboptimally against a team that's able to punish an overextension, but they're playing pretty far back.
Sorry, I'm just laughing because we showed Nico on camera twice, but the thing is he's trying to eat. He's trying to have a snack, and we keep putting the camera up and
That's just rude.
Leave Nico alone. That's, H2K, however, not going to get left alone around the Dragon Pit. It's a third Inferno.
I mean, what do we want? A Drake
Infernal
worth fighting
Drakes.
for. Come on, here we go. H2K are grouped up right now to take out the Rift Scuttler. Let's see if they're able to get the Dragon as well. NIP threatening here, but Nagne's not with this team. He's actually gone back to mid, so he's going to have to come back in.
Yeah, it doesn't
Second
have the package.
Shook. Will he go in time to get the steal? Ragnarok's on! He's going to be able to take it right out from under the noses of H2K. Febiven shockwaves in 3, but all of a sudden NIP have some life in them, and can they find the fight? Profit isolated, tries to get down Febiven as he goes golden. Hiku takes out Jankos in the back of it all, and the dust clears. It ends up being a 1-for-2 in favor of H2K, but no Drake.
No Drake goes their way. Shook once again looking for the clutch plays. Here comes the Abyssal Voyage to defend the tower, but maybe all too late here as Hiku will continue to push up. Nagne plus Hiku, good ability to push through that tower, and finally they've managed to break that middle lane. They've been trying to work on that for the last 25 minutes of the game as Febiven has been sat behind it, but H2K looking to set up the Dragon play while Nagne wasn't there. Shook, clutch play, actually didn't smite that. I believe he just used like a reckless swing and killed the Dragon underneath Jankos' smite.
Yeah. Small window of timing for Jankos to get the smite down, and then all of a sudden, Shook is like, I'll take that. I mean, he has been getting some hero steals off. Just ask Maxlor.
We did last week. Maxlor was not happy. He was not happy about giving away so many Barons.
This is the kind of thing that we've seen Shook be able to do on a number of occasions, and maybe sometimes it's smite, maybe sometimes without. But overall, he has been kind of an up-and-down player throughout his career, but if he's able to do that, that's the kind of thing that can turn you around games.
You know what, though, Pyra? I'm starting to feel maybe things going somewhat in the fortune of NIP ever so slightly, because normally it's Profit gets ahead, or Shook smites a couple of Barons away, or objectives at least, or Hiku manages to get through the laning phase ahead and ends up okay. But it doesn't happen at the same time.
But this game,
it's happening. They are still behind. They are still behind, but with 2 Infernal Drakes, they have a good amount of power. They're scaling later into the game.
And Nagne just pops his package to get the hell out of there.
Profit's equaling up the gold lead in that bottom lane.
I mean,
but H2K have the opening for Baron, potentially.
Well, we'll see if NIP can mount a response to this one right now. Baron has been started up. It's pinged down. Profit still in the bottom side, has his TP available. If only the Ninjas can scare off H2K. The TP is started. Baron's at about half its health, and H2K, not sure if they want this one. They're going to peel off.
Yeah, H2K back away. No attempt for that Baron. With that mid lane already down in the outer tower, NIP looking to push that out, try and get some ground for themselves, but TP advantage now to odoamne.
Yeah. But I like your point that NIP tend to have a couple things, 1 or 2 things going right for them, but when they have those things all lined up, like we're seeing in this game, that is just something that hasn't happened so far. partially because HCK has allowed it, partially because they've taken the incentive to push themselves in this early and now into this mid-game. Maybe the stars will align for the Ninjas in Pajamas today.
Maybe. They certainly have apparently the right attire to be staring up at the stars. Yeah. Well, hopefully it's not a dream.
Hope it's a good dream.
They want this to actually be reality if they can pull out a win, but of course, they are still even, holding even. We're up until nearly the 30-minute mark on this one, and they're holding it even. So this is already an improvement on what we were expecting out of Ninjas in Pajamas.
Yeah, 3-3 in towers, 5-5 in kills. The gold a mere 100 apart. Unless we forget the Infernal Dragon advantage, now NIP are pushing up the mid lane.
Nagne opting for the Infinity Edge as maybe a second and a half item when you take that Hex Drinker into account. This is a really powerful point for Corki. We've seen Power of Evil emphasizing the Rapid Fire and the Static Shiv before Infinity Edge, but remember, when you convert all of that damage into magic damage after the Infinity Edge, Critical Strike, and then Enhancement, you do a serious amount of damage. Then you pick up an attack speed item, one of those energized ones, Static Shiv, Rapid Fire, then avoid stuff. Suddenly, your opponents don't stand in front of you for too very long.
They don't want to get deleted off the map, but Jankos is trying to do just that to Hikyu, who flashes at the last second. And let's see if Spraddle is going to get out of this one alive. Ottawamne on top of him. For how long? The barrel, he's going to be able to dodge it and exhaust as well. That was a close call for Odo, but all of a sudden, Shook and Nagne were right there. But this is a wonky fight on multiple fronts. Nuclear just farming up, but the arrow's coming on in. Shook will tank it up to the face, but he's immune.
That was actually a pretty good fight. The way it balanced out from NIP, it could have been a lot more deadly, devastating in favor of H2K. Don't all recall NIP. Did this last week, and it cost you the game.
Only Spraddle finishes it back. Let's see. Volley comes out, Nuclear. The rest of H2K, though, have been scared once more off the Baron. That's all that the Ninjas need.
That was nearly the exact play NIP did in their games last week.
Oh, they learned from it.
Yeah, they learned. They learned.
Yeah.
And,
they've had a long week to think about what they, what happened, what went wrong since they played up against Roccat. Coming in on the last day of the opening week of Cross Group, seeing all the competition. And it's tough when you haven't been able to put a win on the board, and now you have to face off against a whole new batch of competitors. But we're starting to see some encouraging signs from this team.
Encouraging signs, but there are still some weaknesses. We talked about the strength of Corki. Unfortunately, to go alongside that, he is ATCS down to Febiven. This has continued to go in Febiven's favor, and Febiven significantly ahead, at least an item up. He's got that Void Staff completed, got a needlessly large rod. Keep in mind, Corki's itemization, Trinity Force, Infinity Edge, are some of the most expensive items you can actually build.
But if the game keeps going, it's going to even out eventually. I mean,
it's great, but
that's crazy when you think about how close the gold is, because Prophet's done the same thing to Ottawamne even now.
Yeah, exactly. And you look at the strengths and weaknesses. However, Ottawamne, much less is his team reliant on him. If he gets a good cask, Febiven deals with everybody.
It is not whether or not you're Flame Horizon. It's if you're still able to hit the barrel.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't
you can put out the flame. You can. It doesn't matter as long as it's not alcohol in there. That might not go.
No, definitely not. All right.
Grape juice.
Don't think that's very flammable. H2K, they want to light this game up if they can, but it's been difficult with the Ninjas playing defensively minded. However, they might overstep their bounds here. Ottawamne, will he finish his back? It looks like he stops it. Watching and waiting, H2K trying to bait it out in that brush, but NIP aren't taking chances.
Speaking of defensively minded, Hikyu's like, I got a QSS, now I'm going to get a Phantom Dancer, going to try and stop Jankos.
At least didn't build the QSS first, like some AD carries, we know.
That's true. Steal back the one you were alluding to.
I know he's not here, still taking the shot, but Nagne wants to go on the offensive right now, and he's found Ottawamne. Do they have the damage to finish him? It looks like Hikyu does, and they pull a Catfish on a line. Shook going running, but not going to be able to find enough. Now, the question is that going to be enough for NIP to start the Baron?
Ottawamne decided he couldn't put out the fire from the Equalizer and the special delivery, so didn't even throw out the ultimate in that exchange. NIP going from strength to strength. Now it's Jankos' time to shine. He needs to get in here and try and steal this away.
They turned on for him, but Spraddle might regret his decision to go all the way in. It's going to be Prophet pulled in by the Shockwave. And that's going to be 3-on-3 right now. Hikyu, Nagne, Prophet, all incredibly low. Nuclear flashing to try and cut them off, and there's nowhere to go for this team. But Nagne wants to turn around and go out in a blaze of glory. Prophet, not so much.
Didn't even matter that odoamne wasn't there. H2K able to take the team fight. A couple of key abilities didn't even hit that strong. Febiven caught one person with the shockwave and still was able to output such a significant amount of damage here. And Febiven, Jankos, Nuclear, with the shields, the lifesteal, everything coming through here, they're going to just rush this down. Nagne's around with Shook. 14 seconds on the respawn. No chance of that big play coming from Shook.
Nagne's not going to go for it. He just throws down the Frost Bomb to see if there was a chance in hell he could get the steal off on the Baron. But H2K, after 3 attempts, will finally be able to knock it down. And NIP, overstaying a little bit, punished him.
I started today on the analyst desk talking about my prediction on how Group B's teams would be able to overshadow Group A. And it has gone very differently to that prediction, as H2K, they are ahead, but this is not a clean, fast game against Ninjas in Pajamas like a lot of people were anticipating. Well, NIP start the Baron with the numbers advantage, anticipating an easy take here, but look at the damage that comes out. Straddle just ends up melting in the front. Febiven does enough damage to Profit that it's a good enough start to the fight. And now H2K in the live picture, responding to a Dragon attempt out of NIP by taking mid tower.
And getting the Dragon for themselves as well. So, H2K with the Baron empowerment for another 2.5 minutes. Are trying to knock down the front door of the NIP base. Still some wave clears here, but Jankos is waiting just outside. There's a ward down to spot him, so there won't be any cheeky face checks. Not around now. Nuclear up on the top side. They're going to try to go for the 4-1, or at least knock down as many towers as they possibly can before this buff's expired.
This is going to be a bit of a slow finish from H2K if they are going to close this one out. They'll get a couple of towers here. Likely this Baron buff will expire, but if NIP don't fight them, it might take a while to actually close through the game.
Big influx of gold, but haven't had a chance to turn it back into those items just yet. Didn't look like they backed while the replay was all going through, as they were right on the front door of NIP.
Yeah, 3K for Febiven currently. At least 1,000 gold in every other member.
Still, though, for the Ninjas, it's a little bit rough right now. They're stuck inside their base, nowhere to go unless they can get a pick off on somebody from H2K. There's still a chance to win a fight. It's not that out of control just yet. But H2K, as you said, are trying to take the slow march to victory, not give any chances to the Ninjas.
Thing is, a hook on odoamne isn't enough at this point. Remember, odoamne is one of the weakened members of H2K from being down all game. After Profit managed to pick up a kill from First Blood, as it looked to have been H2K taking control early on, but NIP turning it around to begin the game. This has been a much better performance than anticipated.
Absolutely. Well, H2K are looking to try to go 5 members deep. Now Odo does get hooked up, but he's able to pop his way back. Shockwave gonna get dodged out, and Febiven is fired down by Nagne. Redemption comes in, and all of a sudden, the Ninjas have found some life. They're gonna go all in as Che just tries to pull distraction duty here, but Hikyu is unstoppable. Jankos ticking his health away, and he might just live to tell the tale. odoamne will as well, but that's 3 kills picked up, just traded for Profit.
And that was all from H2K rushing the playoff Baron buff. They just wanted to get any inhibitor tower down. And you disrespect the fact that NIP can still fight here. And look, again, the key abilities don't necessarily land flush for H2K. Equalizer comes out, Shockwave gets flashed over, and Profit just puts himself right in the middle of the fight. Between Nagne and Profit, they have a significant amount of damage to chase this fight through, and that error did not have to be made by H2K. That was an unforced error under the tower that NIP say, okay, thank you for that, we'll take it.
We were talking about the slow march to victory, but then they get antsy. They realize there's not much time left on the Baron buff. We want to make it count. And instead, they're the ones who are losing towers.
But look, like, you had a bot tower that was quite low health. Okay, there's no dragon, but you could maybe secure vision control, reset back on the map. Just a rush from H2K, like, trying to punish NIP in their own base. It wasn't utilizing the comp that H2K have fully. A lot of things missed.
Yeah, really is the case. So the game is going to extend for a little while. We're getting into 38-minute territory. The gold lead for H2K, you know, it was about 4,000 or 5,000, but now it's been cut back once again only to 2.
And this is about to turn into the least protect the Caitlyn-like composition you've ever seen that will protect this Caitlyn.
I mean, Caitlyn's kind of protecting herself right now, too.
There is a Gargoyle Stoneplate about to be Locket of the Iron Solari. Okay, if Caitlyn is stood on top of Olaf, that's probably not a good thing. But in the event that happens, Hiku is going to get like 2,500 health of a shield coming through. Then there's a redemption. There's a Thresh to play defensively. There's enough damage from the other carries that Hiku should go through these fights fairly unscathed as long as he doesn't end up himself crowd controlled.
Well, he's the only member in the game that hasn't died so far, so you got to give the guy some credit. I mean, Hiku, not exactly the name you think of when you're looking at a star 80 carry in European LCS or really anywhere, but today he's showing up.
So to consider how much H2K didn't do with that Baron. 1,500 Baron power play, just over.
Not huge.
It's 1,547. That counts the amount of gold you got from the Baron. So about 47 gold H2K managed to accrue from that. They got towers and then ended up dying, giving a lot of gold over to NIP. And I think that's a testament to NIP's defensive play. H2K looking to set up an engage, but they are on some vision here.
But this is nice because you see that NIP, they've got their 4-1 kind of going strong because Prophet can always teleport in. He's got himself nice and safe to clear out the wave in the most vulnerable lane right now, with that top tower being the closest to going down. But crucially, there's some big objectives coming back up on the map pretty soon.
Elder in 50, Baron in 120. It's one of these moments where Che's going to go aggressive into top lane because Prophet was pushed up. This is what H2K needed to wait for.
So Prophet is going to have to walk this one out, but the arrow goes right on top of him, and it's going to be easy peasy cleanup duty. Down he goes. And Nuclear will get the kill credit here. What can NIP respond with?
Problem is NIP needed to recall as soon as this play started because that top lane inhibitor tower, remember, is already low from the last push. That was honestly what H2K needed to back away and do without the fight turning against them. They didn't need the fight to go in the favor of NIP, because if Prophet strays too far up the lane, that's who you attack.
And pretty much that was it. That's all they needed to do. So H2K don't get the inhibitor, but they lead a big wave of minions right into it. There's always a ward there that they can TP on themselves if they really want to make a cheeky play, but it's all about the Elder Drake right now as NIP are scrambling to try and contest.
Yeah, 20 seconds until Prophet is up. He does have teleport available. Shook, we talked about his clutch plays. He's already had one steal today. Can he get another?
Well, I don't think they're going to give him a chance right now. He's going to have to Ragnarok in just the wrong direction as the Elder Drake goes down in favor of H2K. NIP sent running, scurrying back to their own base, and they're going to have to contend with that mini wave up top.
Somewhat of a denial. Obviously, NIP were in the more advantageous Dragon position, but now NIP will think twice about fighting H2K. That now enhanced single Infernal Drake plus the Elder Dragon bonus onto some of their damage means that H2K are still quite potent. We've seen Febiven put out a lot of damage in fights, now well past 5 items, nearly full build, well farmed in this game.
Yeah, and with the Baron back up on the map, I think H2K would probably try to go for that one again, using their Baron Empower, the Drake Empowerment, I should say, to try and get themselves one more advantage to close out the game. And you can see that's exactly what they're going to do.
We might see H2K engage if Prophet crosses this ward that's in the base, or at least start the Baron.
He might
because look at the gap between Prophet and his team here. He's about to show. Okay, H2K don't necessarily go on it. It would have been fast enough for Prophet to actually close the distance. But it's those kind of things that H2K are looking for with this Tahm Kench composition. Any opening where you have 5-10 seconds without the full number of NIP is an opportunity.
But now all 5 are here. Can the Baron go down in time? Prophet throws the ultimate on, and Jankos is able to get the smite out. But the fight is here. Can NIP hang strong against the Baron, against the Elder, against all 5 members of H2K? And Febiven is going to get a hell of a shutdown right now, and that is going to be H2K looking to clean house. NIP limping back to base, but it's a flash forward for Jankos to try and get the kill. He's hooked on a line. Nogni wants a kill, but he's not going to get it. Che finishes to follow through. Jankos is flayed back, and Sprattle's just going to pop his GA, but it's time for Che and Nuclear to cut the rest of the team off, and this is going to be GG.
Febiven found Hiku, which means H2K will find the win. It wasn't the one-sided game we were expecting, but H2K proving that in game 1 they at least have NIP's number in the late game.
Oh yeah, it took them just shy of 43 minutes, but with every buff in the books, they're going to be able to close this one out. NIP definitely proved to be tough customers on the board, but all said and done, H2K will wipe their hands of it and look to take 1-0 in the lead on the series.
I don't think H2K will be particularly happy with the game, but they'll be happy with a win on the board to start things off. I feel like We might see a little bit of a switch around in top lane, a better matchup perhaps for odoamne up against Prophet, especially considering how odoamne has been performing on the likes of the Fiora, that type of pick.
But dare I say, that was one of, if not the closest game that we've seen from NIP thus far. It's growth for a team that, we've seen these teams in the bottom of the table show some signs of life. The Serious Monkeys had some new roster changes that we saw debut today. But for the Ninjas, that's just building synergy, and it's rough to go down one game here. But to hold a team of H2K's caliber for 43 minutes is impressive in and of itself.
Yeah, definitely one of the better performances out of NIP. You can see just going over perhaps some of the things in the game that didn't quite gel. I mean, we end the game with Prophet over 100 CS up on odoamne.
Yeah.
But Nagne almost 100 CS down on Febiven in the middle lane, and just the damage Febiven had.
I mean, that made a difference in that last fight.
Just basically
that was pretty much all he needed to do. All right, well, H2K kicked off the series with a win. We're going to go ahead and send it to Shocks and Friends to break it down.
Thank you so much, Pyro. We got a lot to say about this one. Very interesting game. Let's start off by looking at the picks and bans from the side of NIP and H2K. And pretty good draft from NIP. So as you were mentioning how the Rumble was actually a really, really good pick and explaining how on blue side and in the game, it's just a really good pick overall.
Yeah, because usually on blue side, your jungle is most likely going to path towards top unless you're looking for a cheese on bot or you want to gank mid level 2 or something like this. But yeah, as we saw, Junkos tried to cheese level 3 top lane, but Olaf counter ganked and they didn't kill Rumble in time, so they got a pretty big lead from level 3 gank.
Yeah, and we actually also really like bot lane was super strong with Caitlyn Thresh. The Corki matchup in the mid lane against Orianna, how do you see that matchup, Caps?
I mean, I think it's kind of even matchup. I think one of the problems for the matchup might have been that Olaf was showing top in the 2v2. So Orianna could place her ball and she could play forward, and she didn't have to respect Olaf running into her. A lot of what we saw at MSI was that Olaf would ghost on mid lane, level 2 to just relieve pressure. And I think if something like this happened, then Corki would have taken over mid completely.
That didn't happen, but NIP did have some good moments in the game. The first one we want to take a look at in just a second is Shook when the Infernal Dragon is up for grabs, and he just goes in.
Shook steals everything.
Yeah.
That is the Shook thing right now. Fight right after. Good shockwave from Febiven obviously coming in, but with Shook diving in for the Drake, he's not even really diving in for anything else. Obviously he got some damage from Jankos, but that's about it. And we actually had a lot of these fights, very close fights, back and forth. Source was very much on the Hiku hype train as well in this game. He picked up quite a few kills. I was a bit more on the Febiven hype train.
Yeah, you had the 3-win conditions was for NIP. No, actually the one was Hiku killing everyone one-shotting, or Febiven carry would have been a win condition for H2K, or Shook running a top, it would have been the other win condition for H2K. I'm just writing down notes, guys.
Yes.
I mean, I think even here when he stole the Drake, it was really easy for Spraddle to just lantern Olaf out, and there would be no fight. But instead, they go for a random fight, and I guess it's also on Spraddle in this time. But we just see a lot of times where Shook will take fights, which,
not the ideal fights. Yeah, well, where they could have gotten more, so to say.
Yeah.
And so as we also wanted to take a look at a top lane fight where H2K were doing really well. They got the Baron, they pushed up, but then they overstepped. What goes wrong here in this replay, guys, or in this fight rather?
I mean, I guess they didn't talk too much about they wanted to take down these turrets because they are all hugging left side, and odoamne, Orianna, and odoamne, Febiven and Nuclear are all eating turrets, and then he gets Ook, and then you have to eat him, and Rumble ultimate is just eating everyone.
So at this point right now, so you already made the mistake as H2K, you were hitting the tower, Odoamne eats the hook, so Che has to use his Devour. It's now on cooldown. Is there anything you can do as H2K now, or is it just doomed already?
I think it's really doomed already. I mean, even Orianna's for sure dead here, because there's no Devour. Orianna is zoned from running out. She has to run around the
She doesn't have flash either.
Yeah, she doesn't have flash. So Olaf Rumble will for sure kill Orianna, and I think if there's no Orianna, then the fight is just really over. I mean, imagine he hits Orianna Shockwave here on Rumble, Rumble doesn't flash it or something, then maybe they win. The NIP can always misplay, but yeah, it should always be a win for NIP.
Yeah, the reason we had this replay and we had these pauses as well in the replay was simply because it's been a problem for H2K in the past. When they do have to make some of these finishing moves, they greed a little bit. You know, Fabian without the flash hitting the tower. Udamne, instead of body slamming away from the hook, he gets hit by it. So Che has to use Devour, and now they're grouping together on Rumble. Like, almost every member right there had a bit of an issue in this fight. We put most of the blame on Febiven and Udamne specifically for playing too greedy. But it's the kind of fight you can't really take if you want to cleanly close out games.
Yeah, it seems like kind of a similar thing where H2K, they play well and then they greed a bit to close it out and make a mistake. And on the side of NIP, they have some good moves like Shook and steal an objective, but then they keep fighting when they shouldn't. So maybe both a bit calmer in those decisive positions. Is that fair? Or?
I think it's definitely fair.
All right. And then we want to take a look at a final replay, which is we've had some Rift Heralds, you know, good uses and bad uses. So this one, I think, takes the cake. So as talk me through the strat.
I mean, the only reason why they will pop the Rift Herald like this is to go somewhere when the Rift Herald start going bot. So I guess they wanted to go mid while the Rift Herald was bot, but they didn't manage to do much because Gragas and Orianna are clearing mid anyway. So it was just bad usage for the Rift. They could have just used it middle to chank the turret or something.
So I want to set up 3 different Rift Herald plays. I want to know from you guys which one was the worst. We had Broxa channeling Rift Herald in front of a Victor.
And losing it.
We had Trick thinking it was a ward and he tried to jump to it. And
This happens often, mostly.
This happened once in the LCS, and then we had this Rift Herald play here from NIP. Which one was the worst?
I mean, I guess this one was the only one that was actually intentional, no?
Yeah.
And the 2 others were like, I guess Broxa didn't think about Victold, and the other one was that, like, he thought it was a ward, you know. So it's hard to say which one, like, if it being intentional makes it worse or better.
Yeah. Well, it was also just the nature of the game. You say they couldn't push. They were really on the back foot. They saw it was running out, so they thought, let's just spawn it down bottom. We did see some good things from NIP. Caps, is there anything you think they can do to get a better result in Game 2?
I think it's pretty hard for them to do anything, actually.
Never mind that. Yeah,
Yeah.
everyone can hear us.
But I think they got everything they wanted, actually. Like, they had the good draft. They had the lead in top lane already. I think it just comes down to them not knowing what to do on the map. And it's really hard to do something about it from game to game. So I don't see how this would go any other way than 2-0.
Could they maybe draft more hard engage? Like, if you don't really know how to set up multiple lanes or division, do you guys think it's a way forward to say, okay, let's actually get to, let's say, Rakan or another champion that can really just start a fight and just say, we actually are going to, like, go straight mid lane and just try and hard engage onto them? Is that more of an answer if you have really bad macro?
I mean, I guess it depends the way they are practicing. If they are practicing only this style, then it's probably going to be harder for them to just go ham and engage team fights 24/7, a bit like we do. But yeah, I guess it just depends about the way they are practicing. And if they actually practice the hard engage style the way you said, with the Rakan and maybe Rakan Gragas, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see what happens, what Nico De Pico has in that brain of his for Game 2. H2K and the Ninjas in Pajamas continue their fight for victory in Game 2, and that is right around the corner.